that refresh. Wait, did you retweet that tweet, by the way, to tell everybody to come watch us?
I will.
Cool. We're probably live. Yeah, we're live. All right, we are live. Well, Anthony retweets the tweet to get everyone into the YouTube. Hey, Anthony, what's up? Good morning to you.
Yeah, hey man. Very, very good morning today. Last night I went to bed, ETH was going up. Woke up, ETH was even higher. And, we're at fresh all-time high. So very, very good last 24 hours, I think.
Yeah, except it looks like we're trying to fight a battle to keep above 2100 right now. Maybe you should go back to bed.
I mean, all right, I'll take one for the team. But like, yeah, I mean, I just looking at the chart, I mean, it makes sense, right? We can't go straight up as much as I mean, we all want to go straight up, but like, I would rather us not just like go straight up and then have like a massive crash again, and then we're all just like, oh crap, here we go, another bear market.
So, well, okay, so we've gone up $100 today. We've gone up. Let me go into the maybe.
I think it's more than that, man.
More than that. Oh Jesus.
Yeah. I think it's like
the 1 day candle that we just closed started at 1970 and ended at 2140. So $170. That's a pretty good run. No, that's not bad. That's bad math. $130.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like when I look at the days, it's like I think the charts are in UTC. So for me, it's just like it's just weird, like because of where I am in Australia. But yeah, I don't know, like just looking at like the 4 hour chart, it's just been going up like so steadily, right? There's been like, obviously $100 now isn't really that big of a deal because we're in the thousands. Like if we were going up like from $300 to $400, that was a huge deal, right? That was like a massive move.
Yep.
This is still a pretty good move, but I think if we just look at the 4 hour, I mean, we were $1,500 like what, like on March 25th or something, 1540. That's where we kind of bottomed. And that's only like, a week or so ago now.
Yeah, $500 in a week is pretty crazy.
Yeah, man. And like, I don't know. I feel like it's ETH's time finally. We've kind of like had to wait around, watch Bitcoin keep pumping for like so long. And we've just sat there and the ratio kind of like just sits there, keeps getting slaughtered. And then, yeah, I don't know. Like, because I just sometimes I look at it and I'm just like, are people just not seeing what we're all seeing? And I think that's really it, right? At the end of the day, there are a lot of people who, I talk about this a lot. There's a lot of people who just don't understand what makes ETH valuable, right? And I believe that as more and more people kind of like learn about it, I guess the more people buy ETH, the higher the price will go. And I see this playing out on, with my kind of like Twitter following. I see new people coming in all the time and commenting and being like, and kind of like discussing the value proposition of ETH. So it is happening. It just it takes a while, right? Like exponential growth is obviously really quick, but it starts off slow, right? And then like it gets exponential from there, and then you don't really notice it. It just happens, and you're like, oh wow, okay. Like a few days ago, there was not many people, and now there's heaps of people. So I think that's what's happening here. But you just got to give it time.
Like there, to some degree, like a lot of the Ethereum people are somewhat like muted in this. Like we're all happy about it, and we're happy about it on Twitter and everything. But like, just at the beginning of this week, we were just at like the $1,500 to $1,700 range, which is just a couple $100 above the 2017 all-time high. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is literally 3x its previous 2017 all-time high. And so like while we're super stoked that we're watching Ether run from like 1900, which was like the tickling top, to where it is now at 2100, it's still pennies in comparison to like what other moves have been made. And so like the celebration is still like decently muted. And you said something that like finally ETH is catching up and finally people are finally getting bullish again. But like we still have so much left to run comparatively to Bitcoin and to other crypto assets. Like ETH has still lagged behind, at least in 2021.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably a major function of like all these public companies buying BTC. I think that's played a huge role in BTC's like monster run, really. I mean, people don't really kind of think about it, but as you said, it's 3 times its previous all-time high, while ETH isn't even 2x, like nowhere even near 2x its previous all-time high, which is 3K, around 3K. And then if you 3x it, it'd be 4,500. So if ETH was like the same as Bitcoin right now, it would be at 4,500. And the funny thing is, I was looking at it the other day. If ETH had the same market cap as BTC right now, it would almost be $10,000. So, BTC has already set the precedent for the ETH to 10K kind of thing. Like markets don't necessarily work like that, where like, just because Bitcoin did it, ETH has to do it. But I do think there's like a huge element of that where people will kind of keep bidding it up and keep kind of like buying into it because it is, relatively undervalued compared to Bitcoin. So there is merit to that, but markets are complex. You never know what's going to happen. If we do see public companies putting more public companies, because we have seen like one or two putting ETH on their balance sheet, that'll be a huge boon. And I think they are. Like, honestly, I don't think this buying is all retail kind of like spot driven. It has to be institutional as well. And, there's a bit of evidence I've seen, to support that. And institutions aren't going to tell you when they're buying, right? They're going to wait. They're going to buy, and then they're going to wait, maybe even like a few months before they tell you. They don't have to report their financials for 3 months. These public companies, like it's a quarterly report, so they can wait the full 3 months. And then, it even lines up with the quarterlies right now, because we just ended Q1 and now we're pumping in Q2. So, are they buying it now? And then so they don't have to report it for 3 months. Who knows? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I can see that happening.
Yeah, I maybe these are my bull market goggles, but like there is a phase of Ether on the balance sheet in this bull market, right? Like this is like we've been saying this on the Into the Ether podcast, but like the jump from Bitcoin to Ether is trivial in comparison from not crypto to having crypto. And not obviously when you start with not crypto, you go to Bitcoin, but ETH is ultrasound money. And all of a sudden, that meme has stuck really, really well. And, I don't think it's that ridiculous to ask the questions like, well, what about other non-sovereign store of value assets that aren't Bitcoin? Like, is this the only thing that crypto has to offer? What else is there behind the scenes of Bitcoin? Oh, this thing that all these other cryptographers have been like working on and progressing and putting like research and development into. What about that? Like, weird.
Yeah, man. And, on that note as well, with the ultrasound money stuff, I've seen more and more people on Twitter recently kind of talking about how they're like, ETH can challenge Bitcoin, right? ETH actually has the merits and the long-term monetary policy to challenge Bitcoin with 1559 and, POS only issuance, proof of stake only issuance, which I mean, we obviously have spoken about for a very long time. We've believed for a long time.
So
It's been obvious
for years now.
Yeah, it's been obvious to us, but like it's hard to convince people because I mean, a lot of people obviously like started with Bitcoin, right, and have like a huge love for it. I mean, I started with Bitcoin in 2013, but I kind of like sold it in 2014 during the crash and didn't come back to crypto till 2017. And obviously, like getting into Ethereum, then like I have a bias and I want to see Ethereum succeed. But objectively, if you just compare the two monetary policies, right, just from a pure, not even about the human aspect to it, just from a pure kind of like utility aspect and a pure usage aspect where, ETH can potentially go deflationary, that is, net better for its value accrual than just having a cap, like with what Bitcoin has. And then you're not even to talk about the security benefits either of that. And I listened to your podcast on Bankless with Hazu the other day, the 1559 podcast. And Hazu started as a Bitcoiner, right? He was very heavy into Bitcoin, still heavy into it. But, over time, he's come into Ethereum. He's gravitated towards it because I think Ethereum, naturally attracts the brightest minds in this space, of which Hazu is one. And then he made a really like a comment that just took me back. Like I was like, wow, I didn't expect him to say something like this. And he said that he believes, I mean, he was cautious about what he said, but like essentially the what he said was he believes that ETH has a shot at challenging Bitcoin in terms of like its monetary policy, which I thought was huge validation of what we had been saying for so long, because it's all well and good for us like hardcore Ethereans to just like say it amongst ourselves.
Right.
But as soon as we get buy-in from the wider group, that's like huge validation. That's like, holy crap, we actually weren't crazy. We were onto something.
Right. Like this is the way crypto systems work, right? Like communities come around crypto systems and they take in the information, they digest the data, then they try and promote the data. And if the data is real, then that promotion of the data will like work its way out of the insular communities into the greater ecosystem. And, respect to Hazu for, because Hazu was a very strong Bitcoiner, if not Bitcoin maximalist. And he said he has kind of just migrated over to the world of Ethereum. Be like, well, wait a second, like what about the end results of these systems? And naturally, the end results of the systems is a very important question, especially when we come to the conversation of predictability. Which is why so many companies are putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet in the first place, is because the dollar is no longer predictable for them. And so they want Bitcoin because Bitcoin can give them more predictability than the dollar can. And that's great. Like, and I do believe Bitcoin can be plenty predictable for what suits the needs of institutions these days. When like the value of the dollar is completely uncertain, all of a sudden you're ready to take on the risk of Bitcoin. But the need to have predictability doesn't really extend beyond 10 years, even less. Like people just need predictability for the next 5 to 10 years in Bitcoin. But we're trying to architect a brand new financial system. Financial systems are not supposed to come and go in 10 years. They're supposed to come and stay for multi generations. And like the takeaway from Justin Drake's episode that we tried to talk about at the very end is like, once everyone else realizes that there's only one crypto system playing the longest term game in crypto, then like other people are going to acknowledge that, and that's the new Schelling point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fully agree. And yeah, about the long term stuff, like that's kind of like how I like to play a lot of things is with the long term in mind. And I mean, what draws me most to ETH's monetary policy is the fact that not only is it long term, but it makes like so much sense from a security standpoint. And just from that point of view, it's like, I mean, we thought we were crazy for a while there, like the bear market and things like that, because no one else was seeing it. And we were like, are we wrong? And obviously, like Bitcoin maximalists were trashing Ethereum all the time and whatever. But the fact that we have like people outside of our core group saying this is huge validation. And I think that's Ethereum's superpower at the end of the day, is that it attracts the brightest minds, and it doesn't mold them to its will, but it basically infects them with these ideas that are very hard to ignore because they're so intellectually stimulating. I mean, if you're a person who wants to be intellectually stimulated and you want to work on the hardest problems in crypto, you come to Ethereum because you have so much to pick from. Like even just to name a few, you have scaling technology, right? Layer 2 scaling, which people may make it sound like it's easy, but it's not. It's extremely hard to do. You can work on protocol level stuff like in ETH1 or ETH2, which is just as hard, right? Distributed systems are not easy to do. You can work on MEV related things, right? Which is obviously, I think MEV stuff is attracting the smartest people in this space because they're just like, okay, how do we fix this? Because if you can fix MEV or at least mitigate it to an extent, I mean, that's a huge achievement in the crypto space. Mm-hmm. So you have like all these things to choose from. And then once you're in Ethereum, it's like pretty much impossible to get out. Like, right. I know there's some people who like to laugh on Twitter and say they started in Ethereum and then they went to Bitcoin. And it's like, well, I mean, I can get that. But at the same time, I really don't think you started in Ethereum. I don't think you actually did or studied Ethereum.
Finish going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of like were at the surface level. You may have had like some bad experience where, I don't know, the fee was high on something you were trying to do. And you're like, okay, well, this is junk. I'm going back to Bitcoin. And that's fine. You can do that. But I just think that I don't know how anyone could join the ecosystem and not be stimulated, intellectually by what we're building here.
And this is a lesson that we can see in crypto at large, right? Like usually people don't leave crypto. Like, and that's not true all the time. Like you said you came into the world of Bitcoin in 2013, and then said whatever, and then all of a sudden you come back into 2017 and then found Ethereum, and then that stuck, right? The surface area that Ethereum has is so immense, it's so sticky, and this is not just true for people. This is what we talk about with assets on Ethereum. When an asset gets deployed on Ethereum, it generally doesn't get undeployed off of Ethereum. It usually just stays there. And like, granted, we're in the young phase of these things, so like there can really generally only be diffusion in one way onto Ethereum, but it's generally been only one way, and until that data starts to reverse, then like I'm gonna start saying it. And so not only are people sticky on Ethereum, but assets are sticky on Ethereum. Ethereum is just sticky, and so like you just rattled off some MEV, L1 distributed systems, layer 2 systems. Like all of these things are rabbit holes that people can go down, and like there's not, each one is a massive rabbit hole in of itself, but there's also like these new rabbit holes that just got created since DeFi summer, which is like Yeah, you know, treasuries like yam treasuries, urine treasuries, and like what it has been started to become, like in my opinion, like a cultural layer on Ethereum. Like urine has its own culture, yam has its own culture, the daily Gwei has its community and its own culture, the Bankless has its own community and its own cultures, and there are these Discord channels with people in them, and that's just product market fit in my mind. Like it's just Ethereum creates like pockets for people to come and stay and just like, here, come live here with us. We have these tokens that go up in value.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And I think that's like the second superpower of Ethereum is that it has so many kind of like rabbit holes, which means it has so many communities and so many diverse communities within it. Like, you know, I don't want to bash Bitcoin, but like, you know, its community is very,
It's one
like,
community.
I guess just got, yeah, exactly. It's like one holistic community that appeals to a very small set of people, I think. And those people are basically digital gold bugs. It is the same thing. If you go and look at the same talking points that gold bugs bring up, right? It's exactly the same. So they've just swapped out gold for Bitcoin. And that's not necessarily bad, but that is like so boring for me, like absolutely boring. Like I actually don't like care about that stuff really at all. I'm not a gold bug. I do care about, you know, ultrasound money in ETH and stuff like that, and kind of like ETH as an asset, but you know, for very different reasons. Like I'm a part of like so many different communities. I like to kind of jump into different Discords, see what people are doing, you know, and you know, you have all the DeFi communities, you have the cultural stuff, as you said, which is the DAOs, the social tokens, the NFT stuff. Like that is bringing in a whole new set of people that aren't even interested in DeFi. So, you know, and that's what I think kneecaps Bitcoin is that they can only appeal to one specific set of people. Right. And that set of people is pretty much like not very big, right? Yes, people own Bitcoin. You know, you can own Bitcoin without being part of the culture. And that's why Bitcoin's value is so high, I think, as well. And you know, you can own ETH as well. You can own any asset. You don't have to be part of the culture to own it. But you know, if you're in this space, I just don't see how you can sit in Bitcoin and be like and have fun, right? So I think that, you know, if you want to have the most fun, you come to Ethereum. If you want to be part of a community that's, you know, not just singular focused, that's actually interested in you know, multiple things, you come to Ethereum. And as you said, like earlier, that's what's so sticky. Like Ethereum is just sticky for everything right now. And I don't see that going away. I don't see like Bitcoin inheriting that because it inherently can't do that. It just doesn't have the ability to do that. Exactly.
So here's my question to you, and I want to zoom back out and get back into the zeitgeist of what feels like today, which is the ETH price and the ETH chart, which is like we've and you've been promoting this as well, and I've been like beating this drum, is like Ethereum promotes like cultural vibes. That's what a token is. It's like the instantiation of cultural vibes, and that's really what this world wants. And then we also have like this ultrasound money meme, which is something that I think is really valuable as a meme and also just as a product. Sound money is product market fit. These are things that we've just created. Like the ultrasound money meme just happened. And like this conversation of around culture and tokens just happened with like NFTs. These are brand new. And so when we talk about like companies putting Ether on the balance sheet, I don't think they're doing it because of these conversations. Why do you think people like companies are putting Ether on the balance sheet? Or why will they if they do, which they're not even really public about it. So they're not even doing that. So like if when there comes a time for like Ether on the balance sheet time, why?
Like if we look at why companies are doing it with Bitcoin as like a starting point of why they would do it for ETH. You know, a lot of them say with Bitcoin, they're using it as like a hedge, right? They're like, they want to diversify their treasury out of US dollars because obviously those are inflating and they want to put it into a quote unquote hard asset in Bitcoin, right? So that's the main reason there. With ETH, the public companies that have put it on their balance sheet so far are Maitu, the one in Hong Kong. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but they gave a different reason. They bought Bitcoin as well, and they said, you know, Bitcoin was the same reason. They're like, it's digital gold, it's a storeholder of wealth, and all that sort of stuff. But with Ethereum, they said, well, they want to use the Ethereum network in the future, and they know that they need to kind of like use ETH as gas fees to use it, so they're stockpiling ETH. So essentially, they're stockpiling ETH as like, I guess, you know, oil, like you would stockpile oil, or barrels of oil, right? To kind of like use in the future. Now, you know, I totally get that. And I totally think that's a completely valid reason to do so. But I think you don't buy $50 million worth of ETH just to use it as gas. I
To
mean,
suspend
I don't.
it.
Yeah. I don't think. I think what Maitu is actually doing is that they're betting that the Ethereum network keeps growing, right? And they're betting that the Ethereum network keeps growing and that the fees paid keeps going up. And they're basically saying, well, if we buy ETH now, and then in the future the fees are like really high, that means the ETH price is probably even higher, because of that and the other reasons. So we're just going to stockpile ETH now. There's I totally get that, but I think the positive note here is that there are multiple reasons why public companies can put ETH on their balance sheet. I think a lot of them aren't even aware. I mean, I would say that pretty much all of them aren't even aware of ETH's kind of ultrasound money properties at all. And that's just even more bullish, because if they're buying it simply because they think the network itself is so valuable that they need ETH, which to me, ETH acts as like the totem of the network, right? The heart of it, right? Where you see ETH growing or see the Ethereum network growing, sorry, you buy ETH. You don't even care that the value isn't directly going to ETH, right? You're just basically saying, well, ETH is the center point of this whole ecosystem, so I'm going to buy it.
Right.
Now, what happens when people actually understand that ETH, once 1559 is implemented, it will be getting that value from the transactions of the network, right? So not only are you speculating on it, from a pure kind of, well, ETH goes up because the Ethereum network activity goes up, but you're also saying, well, I know that ETH is going to fundamentally go up because of the activity on the network. It's actually going to come from the transactional activity. So I think, public companies will end up understanding that eventually. It's going to take some time. But there's an element of FOMO here too, where they're like, well, ETH keeps going up, right? Like you can't deny that. That's like the one objective truth about all of these systems is that you can look at the number, right? And you can say, wow, it keeps going up. It doesn't matter what you think about it. If it keeps going up, you're wrong, right? If you think it's going to go down, or you think you're bearish on it, or you think that Ethereum is crap, but ETH keeps going up, you're wrong, right? Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. You can't even argue about that. You can say, oh, yeah, exactly. You can say things like, oh, it's just going up because it's just like a short-term thing. It's like, no, you can look at the long-term chart. They're like, oh, it's a pump and dump. Well, no, the volumes of ETH and the market cap is so high that it's very hard to pump and dump ETH. Like to move that market takes a lot of capital. So those kind of things as well, I think act as like selling points and stuff too, where people are like, wow, okay, it doesn't even matter that there are these other networks out there. ETH is still king. ETH is huge. The Ethereum network is still king. So let's buy ETH. But it's hard. Like with Bitcoin, it's very easy to say companies are buying it as like a hedge against USD, as digital gold, because that's exactly what people have memed it to be, and kind of like the only thing it can be. Whereas with ETH, there's many reasons why you would buy. You want to speculate on different areas, you can do that. You want to speculate on NFTs. You want to say, okay, well, NFT is going to grow. It's all on Ethereum. Let's buy ETH, right? So I think it's hard to pin down, and we're going to see multiple kind of like, I guess, press releases that say different things from these companies. And I'm curious to see if any of them, I think if one of them, and a relatively kind of like, big company, not like a small company, say it's $1 billion company, if they say they're buying it as a store of value, that's what's going to kick off, I think, the kind of market here, because that's what Michael Saylor did for Bitcoin. He kicked it all off by saying that, because you don't want to be the first one in, but you don't want to be the last one in either. So you want to, like, you really don't want to be the last one in, because you're buying the top essentially. So you want to follow the first person in, because they basically de-risk it for you as well, I think.
Yeah. There's two things that you said that triggered my mind. One was like, I'll start with what leads into the triple point asset. Is like one company will purchase it because they want to use ETH to transact on the network, and then another company will purchase it because they believe it's a competitive store of value, and then another network, and then somebody else will say, well, we're going to buy it because we're just going to take for the staking rewards. And I was like, oh, those are different reasons. Like, you guys are each buying ETH for different reasons. Like, oh, that's because there's three different like fundamental reasons as to why you would buy Ether as an asset, and each one of them is related to the asset superclasses. And so, what if they're just saying is like, oh, we're buying it for one reason? It's just because like, well, they're missing the other two, but that's okay because they only wanted it for the one reason. It only needs to be just for the one reason that they want. The other thing that you said is Bitcoin as a hedge. And I think this is the more compelling thing about Ethereum to me. And this is why I think you left Bitcoin in 2013, but came back and stayed in Ethereum. And in my mind, why Ethereum is so much more sticky is because like hedges are supposed to be boring. Like that's what they are. Hedges are boring. They just are static and inert, right? Bitcoin is this inert thing, and that's its value proposition. I don't want to be, as a member of a community, I don't want to be a member of a community of an asset that's treated as a hedge, right? What about growth? What about the abundance mentality? And that's to me is like, as a cultural disposition, the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin is like, Bitcoin is like, if everything fucks up, at least we'll have Bitcoin. And Ethereum is like, think of all the things that we can create. We can create DAOs. We can create culture, NFTs. Like many of them will be shit, but we're going to create them anyways. And we'll find out the ones that work. And that mentality is a mentality that I resonate. Like, let's like, sorry about the ICO mania. Like, we fucked that one up. Like, whoops. But like, cool. We have DeFi tokens now. They're cash producing assets. We figured it out. Like, abundance mentality. That's what I want.
Yeah, and I think you're right about like why I kind of didn't stick around, in 2013. Like I was really into Bitcoin back then, but Ethereum wasn't around, right? There was no smart contracts, there was nothing. There was Bitcoin, there was Litecoin, there was like Namecoin and Peercoin were like the major ones at the time, and I think Dogecoin as well came out during my tenure at that time. But so. And I was also like younger than what I am now. It's my early 20s. So that played a part in it too. But definitely the biggest part was that I had no reason to stay in Bitcoin during a bear market, right? Because like for me, it's like, well, what am I going to do during a bear market with Bitcoin? There's nothing happening in Bitcoin, right? Like I can't do anything. I can't enjoy like what I can enjoy in Ethereum during a bear market. So, and that's kind of like when I discovered Ethereum in 2017. That's kind of like I knew obviously I knew of Bitcoin. I was like, okay, well, this is like totally different to Bitcoin. This is like, I mean, at the time I fell into the trap of believing that Ethereum was going to replace Bitcoin, right? And at the time, I mean, I think that's what drove a lot of 2017's rally, is that people actually believed this narrative that Ethereum is going to replace Bitcoin, and it almost kind of flippened it, but that's not replacing it. But at this point in time, I believe that Bitcoin will exist as a very niche sort of thing, right? It'll still be worth trillions of dollars. But Ethereum, it will exist as, I guess, like, as you said, like so many different things. We will do so many different things. There will be countless experiments run on Ethereum. There will be countless kind of like different points of view on Ethereum of what Ethereum should be. But we're going to like ossify the monetary policy, which is incredibly important. So ETH, the asset, still has all its nice properties, except they're kind of like locked in place. And I didn't even mention staking, right, as a reason why public companies would buy ETH, because I didn't even cross my mind because there were so many other things that I was thinking about. But that's like a major reason, I think, because if it's like, as you guys call it at Bankless, it's like an internet bond, right? Where essentially like these institutions will buy government bonds that are paying like 1% or whatever, right? And like, yes, that's obviously very safe because it's the government bond. But with ETH right now and it's staking, it's paying like 7% or something like that. So, and yes, it's a volatile asset and all that sort of stuff. But if you're buying ETH anyway, right, and putting it on your balance sheet, you may as well buy staked Ether as well, right? So I think from that point of view, we may see that playing out too. It's going to be fun to see how much ETH is just locked up in staking, because the yields are definitely not going to stay as high as they are now. And I'm curious to see what they kind of like balance out at. But staking is not the only place to get yield on your ETH either. Like you can do it in DeFi. There's plenty of places now. Yes, it's riskier, but there's that aspect to it. So I think, and not just like yield on your ETH, but yield on your stable coins and things like that. All of that's going to bring in so much of these kind of like traditional finance people. And I have no doubt that even the ones that are into Bitcoin and own Bitcoin, they have brought their Bitcoin over to Ethereum, right? Like, so Ethereum, and nothing can escape Ethereum's kind of event horizon. It sucks in everything. You cannot even
Perfect
try to
metaphor.
be like, yeah, but exactly. Like Bitcoin can't even exist on its own. Ethereum's like, no, you're coming here, right? Like we're going to make you better than what you are. So from that perspective, like Ethereum just sucks in everything around it. As you said, like assets, and people, right?
Mm-hmm. And Nick Carter even said this on his episode with Lex Friedman, which was a good episode. I have a lot of respect for Nick Carter. And he even said that like Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be synergistic, because like Bitcoin on Ethereum can do more. And even Nick Carter is kind of the only Bitcoiner that I really trust to be completely sober in his thoughts. And Nick Carter is saying this. Like Bitcoin on Ethereum is just like it's useful. It's more useful, and so that's pretty cool to see. The other narrative that I've been thinking about, and I got this from the One Confirmation guys when we had them on the podcast, is that that they gave this line that Bitcoin is going to be the asset for institutions and Ether is going to be the asset for the people. And the way that they came to this conclusion is that like, and especially like institution, like big companies and nation states, which have generally a much more adversarial stance towards each other than people do, they need something that has that like adversarial focus that Bitcoin does. And so like nation states, US versus China, can transact in Bitcoin, and they can kind of use Bitcoin's like strength as a transactional settlement network, because Bitcoin is a very good transactional settlement network. And like the lack of trust that these people have between each other can really be facilitated by Bitcoin. But as the people, the stat that they gave is like the more the Ethereum has been outpacing Bitcoin in 2020 and 2021 in unique address growth with Ether than versus Bitcoin unique address growth. And this is what we would expect to see for something that literally cannot scale without institutions. It's like, well, if you can't scale without institutions, then only institutions are going to use it. And so last week we saw, or this week, this week we saw Visa deciding to settle transactions on Ethereum, and we wrote this article in the Bankless newsletter saying Visa is paying Ether holders, and we drew the connection between like, okay, Visa is settling payments, peer-to-peer payments where people swipe their Visa card, and they're settling this on Ethereum, which is an institution. And Visa the announcement wasn't that Visa bought Bitcoin to put it, or Visa bought Ether to put it on its treasury. What the announcement was is that if Visa is purchasing Ethereum block space to promote its product, to make a better product. And what that does is instead of institutions putting Ether on the balance sheet, it's instead paying Ether holders, which are the people, because that's what Ethereum enables. It facilitates everyone to be able to be a part of consensus and everyone to have cheap transactions. At least that's the goal. That's the one hiccup that we're at. But this dichotomy between like, only nation states and large corporations are eventually going to be able to touch the Bitcoin blockchain, and everyone else will touch the Bitcoin blockchain in an intermediated fashion. That's where the world of like, oh, Bitcoin, $100 billion of Bitcoin gets put on the Apple balance sheet, yay, versus Apple is using Ethereum as its payment layer, which pays Ether holders. Like, pick your world. Like, which world do you want to be a part of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you put it really well there. That's kind of like the crux of it at the end of the day, and the difference between these two networks. And I find it hard to just kind of like not bet on the utility of Ethereum and like and Ethereum's kind of use as being much better than Bitcoin's. And to be fair, Bitcoin's network doesn't want to be this, right? Bitcoin's network wants to just secure BTC and that's it. Whereas Ethereum wants to secure ETH, but also secure itself and the rest of the, I guess, like applications that are built on Ethereum as well. So for me, the way I kind of I look at the Visa stuff is that I think we've both been calling Ethereum like the world's best settlement layer for a while now, because Bitcoin can settle Bitcoin, right? And that's fine. And they claim, like with Lightning Network, and whenever that materializes, which I don't think it's ever going to, they claim they can do like tokens and settle them, and that settles back to Bitcoin. I don't think that's going to play out. I think that ship sailed a very long time ago. I think Ethereum,
that's hopium.
Its proof of, yeah, exactly. With its proof of stake consensus mechanism and 1559, it has the best security policy out of any or monetary policy out of any kind of blockchain out there, and that gives it the kind of like settlement assurances and security guarantees that other chains do not have, like not even Bitcoin. So from that point of view, you can settle anything on Ethereum, and it's treated in the same way. You settle ETH, right? It's got the security of Ethereum. You settle tokens. It's got like DeFi tokens, the same thing. You settle NFTs. You settle any form of value on Ethereum, and you're inheriting the security. And that security is provided by ETH. So I think that's a big point that a lot of people miss, is that the higher the ETH price, the more security Ethereum has. It's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. So everyone should be rooting for that if you want Ethereum to be as secure as possible. So from that point of view, I just think that Ethereum is already won as a settlement layer. It settled more value than Bitcoin last year, and it's settling more value than Bitcoin just with its native asset this year. Like if you look at the native asset, because obviously you have to take away the rest of the tokens if you want to compare Bitcoin to ETH in terms of like settled value, but ETH as an asset is being settled in more than Bitcoin. and its market cap is like 5 times less than Bitcoin's. So if you were to actually market cap adjust that, and ETH had the same market cap, it would be so much higher. So and this is kind of like a bearish case for Bitcoin. Maybe Bitcoin keeps going up, but like the long-term bearish case is that Bitcoin wanted to be a settlement layer. They said, well, we're going to be the settlement layer for the world, and everyone's going to settle on Bitcoin. But that's probably only going to play out for the BTC asset. Every other asset is not going to settle there. So I look at that and I'm just like, well, long term, I don't see how this works, because their security policy kind of like runs on this. The security policy depends on massive fees being paid to the Bitcoin network. Now, if you can settle on Ethereum without paying the massive fees, because you'll be able to kind of like do it on layer 2, and then layer 2s will settle to Ethereum for you. And then you could also settle whatever asset you want, including stable coins, which I think is very important. I don't know. I just don't see how, and we're already seeing it play out. Like, this isn't like me theorizing about stuff happening in the reality that's going to happen. It's already happening. Like, Visa is just the first one. As I said, you don't want to be the first one in, but you don't want to be the last one in. So we're going to see this massive kind of adoption wave here, I believe. And the scaling can't come at a sooner time. Yes, it's going to take us like years to scale up to billions of users. But the fact that we have this technology out there and it's live, and we've got more coming live, that's going to alleviate a lot of the concerns from these institutions that say, well, Ethereum can't really scale. It's like, well, no, we can scale. We scale this like really cool layer 2 thing that actually uses layer 1 for its security. Mm-hmm. And, as soon as they understand that, they're like, oh, wow, okay. And they'll probably be like, okay, well, how do we do this, right? How do we settle on this kind of global, neutral, secure infrastructure? So in my mind, Ethereum has already kind of like won that. I don't think Ethereum can lose at this point. I think saying that might be like a bit dangerous, but at the same time, I have so much kind of like, I guess, trust and faith in this ecosystem on every layer that I don't know. I don't see how Ethereum loses from here.
Well, like how Bitcoin isn't even a competitor to exactly all the things that you were talking about, like, because that's not what Bitcoin wants to be. Bitcoin isn't suited to settle other assets by its values. Like, it wants to be a hedge. And so like the future of crypto, it can't be just with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin isn't inherently having with growth. Like, optionality and cool other stuff that's not a hedge can't happen. And if it could happen, they would strip it out, because Bitcoin is always trying to become more and more simple, not more and more expressive. And Ethereum's doing the opposite. There are a few comments in the YouTube that I want to read out, and I do want to make this a more interactive for the YouTube comments. So Cave Johnson says, good points. Let's not pretend that EIP 1559 and proof of stake are fully implemented and adopted today. Yes, this is true. Now, the way that I address this statement is that, like, well, like, I'm always going to talk as if they are, because I want my content to like live forever. And I have that conviction that these things are going to be implemented. And so I'm going to talk as if they are, so that in 5 years from now, when people go back and watch an old video of like me talking with Anthony on the live stream, they're like, oh, look, they were talking about it even before it was implemented. And that's just the bet that I've placed. I have another comment I want to read out, but Sazzle, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair comment. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, if you wait for things to actually happen, you're going to miss out on the alpha, right? I mean, I said this a while ago. I've said this for a long time. If you wait for EIP 1559 to actually be implemented, then you're buying ETH at a much higher price, which you are, right? Because 1559 has been around for a while. And part of my, a big part of the reason why I kept buying ETH is the faith that 1559 would be implemented and proof of stake would be implemented as well. So fair comment, but yeah, I don't know. That's just not how I think about these things.
Totally. And the other comment I'm about to read, but I'm also going to put Sazzle's Daily Gwei YouTube channel in there. So you guys should go to there and follow that. This one comes from Chris, and I really like this one. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this name of the chat. I don't know the project. Maybe you do, Anthony. I jumped into the Illuvium chat on Discord the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm discussing with game developers ideas for the game and the direction of how it could go. My mind was blown. Not only can I be heard, but I can also vote on how the outcome is. And even if I have a small stake, my voice is influential to the community as a whole. That's the power of Ethereum. That is what we are calling crypto culture and the power of tokens. I don't know if Illuvium has a token, but if they did, I'm sure it would just fit right in. Yeah, it fits right in, right? And this is where the value of tokens gets integrated into communities and empowers people. At this point, like the saturation of people that shill ETH, which is like me Anthony, Ryan, like DC, like a few other people, like that's kind of saturated. And so like, and this is something that Vitalik's talked about where like, who did he was on an interview with someone. Oh yeah, it was on Tim Ferriss's podcast where Tim Ferriss was like, well, if Ether pumps and goes really high in value and just like that's just like the new, that's just what it is, like how are we going to spread this wealth? And he said, and Vitalik said, well, one thing that helps me like feel like that's a problem. He said that this is a problem. And one thing that helps him sleep at night is the fact that like Ethereum's app layer offers a secondary place of wealth growth. And so like maybe like when people come like 5 years from now and Ether is $1 bajillion because we don't know what the value of a dollar is anymore, people are going to be like, oh, I missed out on ETH. But then they're just going to move into the app layer and be like, well, these new communities are producing new value and producing new tokens, and that's where you can access that upside there instead. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think totally that makes a ton of sense because we already see it playing out with, say DeFi tokens where people are actually trading their ETH for DeFi tokens, right? So it's basically spreading the wealth like that. It's, a lot of people obviously will hoard their ETH like dragons and things like that and hold on to it. But I think that's fine. And I think it's a very good point that the app layer serves as like a pressure valve for that, where you can go there and, you can be early to projects and you can make like, life-changing money. And that will let you stack your more ETH essentially too. So you can get a bigger part of the ETH pie. And that's, I've been following the Illuvium Discord myself. I haven't participated too much, but it's extremely active. And there's so many people having fun in there because it is fun. Like it's a video game, right? It's going to be a game with, built with NFTs. It's going to be built on Immutable X, so it's going to be scalable. Yeah. It's going to have its own token, right? That sits at the center of it. It's going to be able to kind of like vote on things as they were saying and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, totally. This is just like another superpower that Ethereum has of kind of like rallying people around something. Because you can think of, as I said, ETH is like the totem that sits in the middle of everything happening on Ethereum. But then you have like all these other like little totems in the tokens that sit in the middle of these other projects. And they just like all sit around it. And it all feeds value back to ETH, of course. But it lets so many more people come into this ecosystem because, as I said, not everyone is interested in DeFi and, financial products and financial primitives. They would rather just like not think about that. But they are interested in like video games and art and like, collectibles and stuff like that. And they're interested in human coordination problems and getting together with humans and doing like cultural things. It's, the design space is just so vast and there's so many opportunities for people to get involved without having to, I guess, like just buy ETH. You can, you can buy ETH just for gas and then you can just go buy tokens if you want. You don't have to buy ETH, but naturally you want to buy ETH as well because that ETH's going to go up if the Ethereum network keeps getting more activity, on it. So yeah, it's a very good kind of points there.
Yeah, and this is the exact point that we were shitting on Bitcoin just a second ago. It's like, well, if you're a Bitcoiner, but maybe Bitcoin doesn't resonate with you, whoa, no, you're not actually a Bitcoiner anymore. Like, because there's nothing else. There's no, what you just said is release valve. Like, well, what if you want to stay on Ethereum, but like maybe Ether as an asset, like maybe the triple point asset thesis or the ultrasound money thesis is like, oh, that's cool, but like you don't give a fuck. But for all of a sudden, some NFT gaming thing, you do give a fuck. Like, oh, cool, you are actually still inside the Ethereum ecosystem. And all of your demand to use Ethereum stays inside of Ethereum. Like, that's what Bitcoin lost, and that is what Ethereum has to gain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Totally. I mean, it's just amazing how many different ways or different doors there are to enter Ethereum now. But things that not even I'm interested in, like, there are some things that I don't really care for within the NFT space. Like I'm not really like a huge art person or anything like that. But I can see the value in it. I can see why.
Says the guy with a bajillion figurines behind him. What is that? Is that not art?
I mean, okay, maybe traditional art then. I don't know if you consider this. I consider these collectibles really. But like, you get like traditional art stuff, like, hanging paintings up on walls and things like that. Not really my jam. But definitely see the value in it. And I don't have to like it, right? I don't have to like everything. As you said, Bitcoiners have to like Bitcoin to be a Bitcoiner. I don't have to like, art NFTs to like Ethereum.
Yeah. And it's that growth and abundance mentality that, again, I think is really infectious and I think is missing from the world at large. What did I want to turn to? Oh, here's what I wanted to turn to after this. So I looked at my portfolio this morning and I was happy in US dollar terms, but then I looked at my Ether denominated portfolio and then I got sad. What's your opinion about like thinking about the future of these markets in Ether terms or DeFi token terms? Like, and also when is DeFi season happening? Like what?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a funny one because it depends on a lot of things, right? So it depends on, I guess, like what you want to do with this kind of when you're investing in this space. Like, is your goal to just stack more ETH and keep that as ETH and not cash out to US dollars, right? If it is, then yes, you should be measuring your portfolio in ETH. You should not be measuring it in US dollars. Is your goal to stack US dollars because you know that inevitably we're going to go into another kind of bear market, and you don't want to be in the middle of that. You don't want to ride ETH down another 90%, which I don't think that's going to happen, but it's still, there's a chance it will. Of course, you're going to measure your wealth in USD. But if you're trading between positions and you're trading ETH for something else, then you need to measure that trade in ETH. Because if you trade ETH for another DeFi token, say you trade 10 ETH for a bunch of SNX, right? If that SNX doesn't outperform ETH for the duration of you're holding it, you end up with less ETH than you put in, then that trade was a bad trade. Doesn't matter that you made more USD. The fact that you gave up 10 ETH and you got back maybe 8 ETH or something like that is a bad trade. So that's another aspect to it. There's other things that you can do where you can actually, I don't recommend this unless you understand what you're doing, but you can take leverage out on your ETH. You can basically put your ETH into Maker, borrow stable coins against it, and then go speculate on other tokens. From that point of view, you can measure it in USD, right? Because it doesn't matter if you outperform ETH or not, because you're not buying more ETH with it, right? You're not trading your ETH for it. You're buying it with US dollars. So that's how I kind of think of it. Whatever you buy the other token with, you should be denominating your returns in, because then you would have been better off staying in it. The way I kind of approach it, I have a permanent ETH stack that I plan to never sell. It's a percentage of my stack. It's not like the whole thing. I definitely will sell to fiat at some point, because you can't just like you have to take profits eventually.
We
right?
did that once. We made that mistake once.
Yeah, that and the fact that like I need to kind of like buy things. I need to pay bills. I need to get a house and stuff like that. So there's expenses as well there. So from that point of view, definitely not going to be holding everything. But my goal is to just like not have to sell my ETH, right? I have a bunch of other assets that I hold. I just want to ideally not sell my ETH. Even if I have to write it down 90% or whatever, that's fine. I'll just stick it in staking sort of thing. So that's how I approach it. And I guess your last thing was like, when DeFi season. I mean, typically we see if ETH's pumping, DeFi is not far behind. The only rule here is that Bitcoin needs to not go like really volatile. It needs to not pump a lot, because if it does, it can end the party. But while ETH is gaining on Bitcoin on the ratio, while ETH is going up a lot, it gives the market more confidence that other things can go up now. And I think DeFi is obviously tightly coupled with ETH. So I think we will see that. Not investment advice, of course, but if you go back and you look at the charts, this is typically what happens.
Yeah, so everyone's kind of tapped into the fact that like Ether doesn't really do much when Bitcoin is volatile, and then when Bitcoin calms down, then Ether tends to wake up. Would you say that is the same relationship that DeFi tokens have with Ether? It's like DeFi tokens are like, oh, Ether's pumping, let's wait until it stops, and then let's go. Would you say that's the same relationship?
I think it is, but to a lesser extent. I think that DeFi can pump on it while ETH is pumping as well, but it's a function of like where I guess like the money is going. Because if ETH's going up, then you see all these people plowing into ETH to ride that momentum. Because a lot of people like to be momentum traders, and you don't fight the momentum in either direction, right? If it's going up and going up a lot, you want to join in on that, and that's just like kind of what happens. It's a self-fulfilling kind of prophecy where it's like, okay, well, it's going up a lot, I need to join in. Sometimes it's FOMO, sometimes it's a calculated bet. But then it happens the other way, where people are like, well, it's going down a lot and the momentum shifted. I need to kind of do that. I need to sell into this and then that kind of like, I guess like snowballs from there. But I do think that DeFi, because it's tightly coupled to ETH, but because it's a distinct thing as well, it can go up, while ETH's going up as well. But I don't think ETH staying flat is particularly good, because if ETH is flat and Bitcoin is going up, then that's bad for kind of like DeFi. But if ETH is flat and Bitcoin is flat, I don't know how much DeFi can do in that scenario. It can probably go up, still, but ETH needs to kind of be in that mix, I think, to give the market confidence that, it's time for like quote unquote alt season. Even though I don't think ETH is an alt, it leads them. It's definitely the king of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it to me, Ether indicates risk on versus risk off. The other question I have for you is that Everyone loves tokens. People love tokens. Tokens are fun to play with. Tokens go up and down in value a lot. Sometimes you can make a lot of money off of tokens. The only token that I remember in 2017 that's still relevant today is MKR. And the MKR token is also the token that has kind of been known as like the boring token, right? And so the other question I have is like, great, like these tokens, these DeFi tokens are capital assets. I highly doubt Uni token is going anywhere, but it also doesn't have that much Lindy. And, you know, Comp token's brand new. Aave is still like relatively new with regards to how big its market cap is. And like there were plenty of tokens that I owned in 2017. They were like, oh my God, this is the future. And then all of a sudden, like they were not the future. And so like, what's your opinion on like the sticking power of these tokens versus what we've had in the past? And like, because again, our benchmark is Ether, right? Like who gives a fuck about the dollars? Like we know Ether is going to be here in the future. And so when we talk about like how long are these tokens going to last, we have to assume that like our benchmark is Ether.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a function of like why you get more returns in these tokens. They're way more speculative, right? And why you potentially get more downside. But on your note about like things around since 2017, it's actually funny you mentioned that because SNX and Aave were known as Haven and Lend in 2017. Right. So they were both around.
Yeah, both had a rebrand.
Yeah, both had a rebrand and a token swap. And you know, DeFi wasn't a thing in 2017. So, you know, there are a handful of them that survived. You know, 0x is still around, right? That was in 2017. True. I think Loopring, maybe Kaiba. There's a bunch of them around. But, you know, in terms of like outperforming ETH, I haven't looked at which ones have outperformed ETH and which ones haven't. I know for sure, you know, Aave, SNX have, MKR definitely hasn't from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Like it's very hard. And this is why you see the short-term volatility is because people don't want to hold these tokens for very long because they know they're extremely speculative, right? And they know that there's a lot more risk involved, especially the newer ones. Like if you see a new token that comes out and launches, it's extremely volatile in either direction. Like it can go up, you know, two times in a day. It can fall 50% in a day, very, very easily. You know, and these typically have less liquidity too. So it's very easy to kind of pump and dump them. People just like as a function of just do not want to hold it long-term. But over time, this is what happens in every asset. Over time, you build a long-term holder base. You build a stronger hands base, right? This is what people talk about when they talk about weak hands versus strong hands. You have the weak hands who are coming in, they're new, you know, they're not like comfortable with holding these assets during these drawdowns because maybe they buy in at $1,000 on something and it goes to $1,500, but then it drops 50% from there. And it's kind of like below what they bought it at. Whereas you can have someone that bought it $100, right? And if it goes to 1,500, then dumps 50%, they don't care because they're like, well, I bought it $100. Like I can hold through this. This is like the strong hands versus weak hands. And that only happens over time as a function of its market cap increasing. So you see this play out across like literally every asset. That's why volatility for BTC and ETH is way less than it is for the majority of other things. You know, the higher the market cap, the lower the volatility, you know, normally how it goes. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. But it's very, very hard to invest in this space with like a 3 to 5 year mindset, right? Because you can say, I'm going to buy this DeFi token, right? Because I know in 5 years, this app's still going to be around. It's still going to be dominant. And this token's going to both keep going up in value and outperform ETH. Is it? You know, 5 years is an eternity in crypto. Is, you know, I'll even go as far as to say, is, you know, Uniswap going to be around in 5 years, right? Like Uniswap's huge now. You know, will it still be around in 5 years? I don't know. Like, I don't have like 100% confidence in that, but that's the risk that you take. But like, I know, like I have near certainty, like not 100% of course, but I have near certainty that ETH and Ethereum are going to be around, right? Just the app layer is a lot harder to invest in because you just don't know. And you know, the further down kind of like the newness scale you go of these apps, the riskier it is because, you know, there's tons of apps that are launching right now that I can tell you 100% not going to be around in a year, let alone 5 years. Because they just will not be able to gain the market share. They just, you know, they do not have the right team. They maybe don't even have the runway to keep going. They don't have the right idea. They don't have the right product. This is the exact same thing with the real world. When you invest in a business, 90% of them go to zero, right? So when you're investing in the app layer, you know, potentially 90% of them are going to, I mean, maybe not go to zero because nothing ever goes to zero in crypto, but are just going to like, you know, not do anything. And you're going to lose out.
Won't keep up, right?
And exactly.
To me, this is an extension of why the app layer of Ethereum is so good as in important for humanity, is because there's churn in the app layer. And the reason why these tokens generally don't have sticking power, staying power, is because the app layer to Ethereum is brand new. Like, this is a completely new like spectrum of the universe that humans just discovered. And so like no way is the thing that we built in 2016 going to keep up with the things that we're building in 2021. Like, that's not going to happen. We know so much more. And the reason why there's churn is because the app layer is like this crucible of free market competition, and like everything improves so and iterates so incredibly fast, which is good for the people, good for the consumer. Competition is always good for the consumer, right? And so like because like liquidity is not sticky and can migrate from application to application, and because like applications can be easily forked and made into new ones, and then composability and then innovation, blah blah blah, like the free market crucible in Ethereum's app layer is so incredibly strong that like you're probably going to get beaten out by some design construct that you've never even thought about that's going to come out in like 1 to 3 years from now. So it actually makes sense that the app layer doesn't have any sticking power, at least at the very genesis of Ethereum. At some point, that does run out. And I do believe that like with some specific projects, and personally, I would include Uniswap v3 in that model. I think Uniswap v3 has the sticking power that many other applications don't. I would also personally include MKR in that camp as well. MKR has some of the biggest Lindy in Ethereum's app layer. Everything else has like not proven itself to like be able to stick.
Yeah, and there's 2 points to that as well. So the first point is that we've actually seen Uniswap fight off competitors. It fought off SushiSwap, right? It's still doing way more volume. It still has more TVL, right? It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still like the darling and everything like that. People still use it. So there's that aspect to it. And then the other aspect, people might bring up, well, Ethereum has competition itself, right? Ethereum has competition from other chains. It's like, I mean, yeah, but like, can you even call them competition given like the fact that they're so far behind Ethereum, right? Maybe in 5 years, there are other chains that exist and have like similar levels of activity to Ethereum. But I don't think that, I mean, I haven't seen any other chains that compete with Ethereum in the same game, right? It is not competing to be the ultra decentralized, ultra secure settlement layer for the world. It is basically, sacrificing decentralization to be something else. And that's fine. Like, I don't think, honestly, people might think that I think these things are crap because they don't, do what Ethereum does. And no, I think these things are uninteresting because they don't do what Ethereum does, right? I think that they'll get market share and they're fine, but it's not where I want to spend my time. So Ethereum has incredible Lindy. It's been out since 2015. It has 100% uptime, right? Some people will argue that functionally the Shanghai DOS attacks at the end of 2016 mean that Ethereum went offline briefly because, one of the clients went offline, but the network was still producing blocks. Mm-hmm. Yes, no one could use it because there were DOS attacks, but it was still.
If we're counting that, then Ethereum has more uptime than Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, exactly. So from that perspective, Ethereum's stickiness is incredible. I think a lot of these other networks that have a lot of people involved with them are not going to be here during if we go into a down period. They're going to exit as fast as they came. So from that point of view, I don't consider the Ethereum network to have kind of like any, I guess, like real competition and any real risk of kind of like failing. I don't even care that the fees are high right now because I know I'm very confident that the layer 2 scaling is going to work and we're going to be able to scale Ethereum. Yes, we're kind of like probably bleeding some market share to these low fee kind of chains, whatever. But again, they're different. They achieve these low fees by sacrificing decentralization. And then we could go into like the whole discussion about, do users actually care about decentralization, all this sort of stuff. And my kind of like TLDR there is like, okay, maybe users won't care in the short term, but they definitely care in the long term. Yeah. And they do not care until they need it. And institutions and like, companies and stuff with billions of dollars, they're going to give a shit about it. They're going to give a shit about decentralization and security. They're not going to want to use networks that, have central points of failure at the end of the day, because, if they're going to do that, then just stick with what they have. Right. So that's kind of like the kind of way I view competition for Ethereum. And maybe people will say, well, you're being too like, cocky about it. You're resting on your laurels. And like, we're not though. Like Ethereum is not resting on its laurels. Ethereum is not Bitcoin. It did not say, well, we're just going to be this one thing. Ethereum is innovating across every single vertical that you can think of right now. And that's not even slowing down. I mean, you and I spend every waking, minute in the Ethereum ecosystem and we can't even keep up with everything. We cover it all the time. We try to educate. Yeah, so that's kind of like why I push back on that. And people can think and laugh at me and say, well, Ethereum's getting too cocky, it's going to be dethroned and
Right.
whatever. Like I'm
I'll
fine
see
with
you in
that.
3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll see you after the next bear market. We'll see how many of your favorite Ethereum killers are still around then.
Right. That's exactly right. Like at some point, like the energy to convince the people that think that Binance Smart Chain is coming for Ethereum is like, if you really think that, like, great for you, and I'll talk to you later. Like, you'll figure it out eventually, or you'll leave, and either way, my problem is solved. Anthony, this has been a great Friday live stream. We're doing this every week, guys. And again, shout out for the people in the comments. The comments are a ton of fun. I just posted Sazzle's Daily Gwei YouTube channel, so go ahead and follow that if you want to keep up with what Anthony does. He does basically what we're doing every single day, but he does it by himself as he runs through a bunch of news. It's my personal where I get all my alpha. And then also, while you're here, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. And Anthony, I will see you again in a week.
Yes. Hopefully, we're at fresh all-time highs in a week as well.
Yeah, keep it all-time highs every day until next week. I'll see you. Okay,
Yeah,
Anthony, what are we going to be at next week?
Oh man, we have to be at least 2,500, I would think.
In 7 days?
I mean, why not? Like $100, less than $100 gain a day. Like we're only $400 away from it now. We're good. I think we can get there, but we'll see. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here.
I love it. I love that. Well, why not? All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in,
Cool.
and we will see you in a week at $2,500 ETH.